In this video, we're going to take a look at some of the angle relationships in one triangle. To start things off, we have this theorem that you all, I'm sure, are familiar with. It's called the angle sum theorem. It says if you take all the angle measures in a triangle, so the interior angle measures, if you add them together, you are always going to get 180 degrees. No more, no less. This is something we will prove together in class. So the benefit here is if I have two angles in a triangle, if I want to find the third one, I can always do 180 minus those two measures, and that will always get me the third angle. So speaking of third angles, let's say I have two different triangles. So here I have two different triangles. If two pairs of angles in those two triangles are congruent, so you can see that in those arcs, I have single arcs for two angles in the separate triangles and then double arcs for two other angles. And then at angle A and angle B, I don't have any mark. Well, what this theorem says is since the other two pairs are congruent, angle A has to be congruent to angle B. And the basic reasoning here is, well, you've used up the same amount of 180 degrees in both triangles, so you have the exact same left over. Taking into account these two theorems here, we can make a couple of conclusions based on the type of angles that we can have in a triangle. So going back to the angle sum theorem, this will tell us things about, if I know I have one type of angle, what the others might have to be. So for example, if I have one right angle, so let's suppose here in this picture that angle B is a right angle, that can be the only right angle in that triangle because a right angle measures 90, and I have 90 left over that I need to use to make angles A and C. So there couldn't be one other right angle. For that matter, if I have an obtuse angle, if angle B was like, let's say 100 degrees, there's no way I could have another obtuse angle in that triangle because if I have two angles, both of which being more than 90, when I add together, I get more than 180, and that would violate this theorem here. So can't do that. Always get 180 degrees whenever you add all three angle measures. So knowing one thing about one angle in a triangle helps you figure out some things about the other angles. Lastly, we're going to take a look at something called an exterior angle. So for this blue triangle here, that bottom side, they decided to extend out and they labeled the angle formed angle 1. So that's going to be what we call an exterior angle. It's sort of like outside of your triangle, but still connected to it. Whenever you form an exterior angle, you automatically form what are called remote interior angles. So these are the angles inside of your triangle that are not adjacent to your exterior angle. So it turns out whatever that angle is, so angle 1, is always going to be the sum of remote interior angle measures. And so the reason why is really about that adding up to 180. So here I could say that the measure of angle 1 equals the measure of angle 2 plus the measure of angle 3. And the reason why is, let's suppose that next to angle 1, let's label that like angle 4 or angle 5. That angle we know would be supplementary to angle 1 because they are a linear pair. But also that angle adds to the measures of 2 and 3 to also make 180. And so you can make a quick little set of equations and kind of move things around, and you're going to get that the measure of angle 1 always equals the measure of angle 2 plus the measure of angle 3. And we'll prove that together in class. Just one last thing I want to add here. It really kind of depends on how you make that exterior angle. There isn't always just one of them. For example, I could take that same triangle, and if I extended maybe that sort of upper side there, now that exterior angle is angle 4. So you can extend any side you want to and make an exterior angle. Now with angle 4, the remote interior angles would be the ones not adjacent to 4. So that would be like angles 5 and 3. So now if I wanted to find the measure of angle 4, I could say that the measure of angle 4 is the measure of angle 5 plus the measure of angle 3. And if I wanted to, I could extend yet that third side and then come up with another equation. So these can get a little tricky. One thing that tends to help students is maybe rotating their papers around to where it looks kind of like this. For some reason or another, this just tends to make a little more sense visually when we're looking at exterior angles and remote interior angles. That should do it for section 4.2.